Record.
Oh, that's what he is.
Oh, yeah.
He's a princess, drama queen to the max.
Oh my god.
Same with my.
Cool. Okay, so I think we are ready for the housekeeping start.
All right.
Cool,
Oh,
we're set. All right, everyone. So before we get started with our guest speaker, we're just gonna go through some housekeeping. So this QR code right here is our member form. If you're a member of SDAG, will you please fill this out? It basically just gives us some emergency info, contact, allergies, just some basic stuff so that we can keep things running smoothly. And basically, when we say a member, we mean anybody who is not necessarily just here for extra credit. We mean anybody who's just joined, anybody who's been here for a while, just anybody who's planning on sticking around. We'd really like to just have that information just in case. Yeah, certainly. We love when extra credit people come regular people, just to clarify. Oh, yeah. Yes, yeah. But just, I want to be sure that people know, like, we don't mean just like active members. It's just whoever. But, and for those of y'all who are here for extra credit, make sure to check in with Gray at the end of the meeting. And for our Zoom people, what all do they need to comment in the chat? Yeah, at the end of the Zoom, you will put your name, the name of your professor, and the course name and number into the chat for me so that I can make sure I have you marked down and I can give that information to your professor. All right, and we can transition into our guest speaker. Yeah, go for it. But I was gonna say that technically comes inside. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. Okay, here we go. All right.
Okay. Okay, hi guys, my name is Madeline again. I'm here to talk all about service dogs. This is my service dog, Mercury. He is an alumni of Guiding Eyes for the Blind, which is specifically a guide dog school for the blind and visually impaired. I'm blind. He's my guide dog, and that's up in Yorktown Heights, New York. So a little bit of a trip, but that's where he came from, and we've been a team since 2018. He was a 21st birthday present for me. And we've been a team ever since. And I love advocating about service dogs. I think it's something that we don't talk about a whole lot. It's not really educated on, except from people in the community. And it's really important because Americans, just in general, society is very dog centric. A lot of us have dogs, a lot of us bring our pets in public. So it's just really important to understand what service dogs are and what they aren't, and how to interact in the world with them. So that's me and Mercury. Next slide, please. This is our outline. We're going to talk about what are service dog laws and etiquette, and then is a service dog right for you for anybody who's thinking about getting a service dog. It's not a fit decision, so it's important to talk about that. Next slide. So what are service dogs? Service dogs are task-trained dogs to aid a person with a disability, and emotional support animals, which is, where people get confused, are not task trained by definition specifically, so they would not be able to be defined as service dogs. And the caveat here with the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, that kind of is defined, the laws that define rights for people with disabilities. You have to have a dog specifically as a service animal. You can't have like a service cat or a service bird. That would be considered a support animal. There is a caveat with miniature horses. If you are like someone who's 7 feet tall, you would get a miniature horse, usually as a mobility aid or something like that, because your service animal has to be a certain percentage weight of you to be able to help you, especially with things like mobility. So, yeah, there we go. So types of service dogs, there's a bunch of different types because we have a bunch of different types of disabilities. There's guide dogs, which is what Mercury is. Deafblind guides, which dogs can also be trained to mitigate someone who's deafblind and just who's someone who's hard of hearing. Mobility dogs, which are all kinds of physical disabilities. Medical and diabetic alert dogs, which are its own category. And then psychiatric service dogs. And I have psychiatric service dogs separately because that's kind of where people are more like uninformed about the differences between psychiatric service dogs and ESAs. And ESAs are purely there just for emotional comfort. That's why they don't require training, because they're not tasked to do anything really to mitigate a disability. Psychiatric service dogs are service dogs like PTSD dogs for veterans, psychiatric service dogs for people who have debilitating anxiety and other kind of psychiatric disorders. So, there's a line and there's like different definitions for each type of dog, but it really comes down to, you know, is what you're dealing with a disability that can be mitigated past just having the comfort of an animal. So here's kind of the differences laid out. I'm not keeping up with myself on my own presentation. Of service dogs and emotional support animals. And the main difference at the top is talking about like what kind of like certification or paperwork you would need to have that kind of animal, like in public, in your housing, if you rent, etc. And so service dogs don't require a license or a prescription to have. I don't have a prescription for Mercury. He doesn't have an ID that's like ties to the US government or anything. There's no licensure, there's no certification, there's no nothing. And that's just, you know, what the ADA lays out. Service dogs can come from schools, private trainers, they can also be self-trained. And that's all, you know, broken down in the ADA. And there's no documentation required for public access rights for service dogs. The ADA only requires 2 questions to be asked. We're gonna go over that later. But this is, you know, I feel like mostly people would assume that all kinds of service dogs would come with some sort of ID. They don't. We don't have any kind of identity, like ID process for service dogs in America. Emotional support animals, on the other hand, are something that you can get from a doctor through a prescription, especially if you're someone who works with a psychologist, psychiatrist, or just you know, you can get one from your like family physician. But you would need a prescription to have an ESA in something like a dorm or in a classroom and things like that. So ESAs do not require training, which we just touched on, and can be any type of animal from anywhere. So emotional support animals don't have to be dogs. They can be cats, like I said earlier, any type of animal. And documentation is required to have an ESA in public space unless it's pet friendly, like hotels, Lowe's, things like that. I don't know. I've never seen a cat in a hotel, so I don't know how that would go over a cat in Lowe's, but like, you know, pet friendly areas, you know, etc. But where you can bring your pet dog, you can bring an ESA too, essentially. So basic laws and rights. So rights to access. Service dogs are allowed in any place where the public is allowed. So this includes indoor spaces, schools, government buildings, and other places. This does not include sterile environments like an operating room or private homes. So that's like the caveat to like, you can bring your dog anywhere, yeah, within reason. So I can't go into somebody else's home and say, oh, my service dog has the right to be here. I can't, you know, that property is privately owned by somebody that's their residence. They have a right to tell me I can't bring my dog in there. And then sterile environments for obvious reasons. Like if I was having surgery, I wouldn't want my dog right next to my surgeon who's like opening, you know, my body. So obvious reasons can't be in like bars and things like that. Right to privacy. Service dog handlers have the right to privacy and cannot be forced to disclose any kind of medical information, which is obviously covered by HIPAA, but just also in the ADA as a fallback, and cannot be forced to prove disability in any way, including to law enforcement officers. So you cannot ask somebody like, hey, like you need to show me that your dog actually knows how to do this. Like you have to show me an ID, you have to do this. Like there's none of that is legal in the United States, which actually happens a lot. That's the biggest problem with service dog handlers is denied entry into places because somebody will ask for an ID or certification or something like that. And it's just like, you're not even legally allowed to have one, let alone ask for one. So, yeah. And then public access requirements. So these are 2 things that is kind of accompanying the next slide. So these are 2 things that I think that are lesser known that I really wanted us to like talk about and educate on. Public access requirements, like what are your requirements as a service dog handler to keep your dog in public and maintain that right to public access? But then what are the 2 questions in the ADA that you're only allowed to ask somebody with a service dog? Does anybody know any of these answers? Do you? No, really? They don't go over this in book? You never know
I'm
this?
here to come with that.
Okay,
Okay.
Fair. Jake went back. Quiz time.
What does the dog attached string do?
These 2 questions? Yes. Well, no, that's not one. That's not one. That's not
It's
one. Wrong
It's
answer.
close.
It's close, but no.
So, blanking.
They're really obvious, like, duh questions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a guess. Is it like what services the dog provide?
Yeah, kinda. Kinda. Jill, give us our answer.
Is this dog trained to help with disability?
Yes. It's really obvious, yes or no question. First thing you ask. You see a rando dog in public.
Is this a service dog?
Yes.
Yes.
Bam. So the two questions that the ADA lines out, this applies to anyone and everyone, including law enforcement, whatever. You see a service dog in public, you go up to them and say, is this dog a service dog? Yes or no? And is this dog trained to mitigate your disability? The dog has to belong to you, like you have to be the handler to have them in public. So like Mercury is a service dog, but like my father could not take Mercury into a random public place without me. Story time later on that, but not that it's never happened.
It's like that's the same, that it's the same kind of thing as like when somebody asks to use your disability parking placard because they
Yes.
want access to
Yes,
parking,
it's
like
the
easier
same thing.
parking.
Sometimes life happens and like I gotta pass my dog off to somebody, you know, that's a totally different scenario. But overall, like you cannot just take somebody's service dog into public for the sake of damn it.
Like in theory, even though I'm blind, I couldn't go take Mercury out in public and be like, this is
Yes,
fine.
that's a very good point, even though, yeah, very good point.
Yeah, even
very
though
good
he's
point.
trained to help
For
the same kind of condition, it's like
Yeah.
he's trained for you.
Oh, yes, we'll get into that later. It's like the wands on Harry Potter.
You know
Like,
what?
you have
That's
to
a good
do your service
analogy.
dog, your service dog should use straight up. Okay, anyway, moving on. So the answers on the next slide. Oh, we didn't go over the top part, but we will. That's okay.
That's okay.
Continue. So the questions at the bottom, is your dog a service dog? Is your dog task trained for your disability? The public access requirements. So this is like what Mercury has to do to make sure that he still has the right to be in public. And if he's not maintaining these three things, he can be kicked out anywhere. Us as a team, like anybody can be like, yeah, you're not by. Like, and the three things are they must be under control at all times, not being disruptive, so like not barking, not like sniffing on other people. They should not even be acknowledging other people, let alone like do anything to them. Must be housebroken, so no defecating on floors or anything like that. Obviously, accidents do happen once in a blue moon. Mercury has pooped in the middle of the airport before. But you know, stuff happens, so you just move on. And as long as it's not like cyclical, you're fine. Must be leashed at all times and must actively tasking. So you also have to be one with your dog unless part of their task involves getting unclipped and coming back to you, which a lot of PTSD dogs are trained for, like a PTSD handler, which is actually trained very similarly to guide dogs, can unhook and tell their dog to go into an environment and come back and tell them whether or not it's safe. So like if the dog walks in and sees like, you know, thinking going into the Russell Union and seeing that entire downstairs lobby just like full of students, that dog can come back and be like, yeah, there's a ton of people in there. Like, no, it's not. let's
Not a
do
good
that.
idea.
So, but yeah, dogs are amazing. They can do all kinds of things, but those are the three things that really are maintained. Now, the caveat to this, which I will say, the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is our big federal piece of documentation that allows all of our rights. It was written in the 1990s. It's an imperfect piece of legislation, okay? And this is one of the biggest things that I would love to change about the ADA, is that notice how there's no hygiene standards on here, okay? So in theory, it's legal for me to just not bathe my dog and take him into places like grocery stores and restaurants. Think about that for a second, right? There's no physical health standards. There is nothing keeping me accountable as a handler to make sure that Mercury is healthy and is in top physical shape to be able to do his job. And that's something that I would love to add to the ADA. And I mentioned earlier that there's no licensure for service dogs, and there's a really great reason in today's America why we don't have licensing and how America is today. I agree that we shouldn't have it, but I would love to be able to live in a country where I am protected as a citizen with my service dog through something like a driver's license, but for your service dog. And that would only be changed if disabled people were at the forefront of those decisions, but we're not right now. So I digress. It means you should vote in every election. Anyway, continue. So with great power of a service dog comes great responsibility. Okay, and this is where it gets a little comical. Service dog teams are one unit. So Mercury is considered my medical equipment, and we are considered a whole unit when we are in public. So anywhere he goes, I go, he goes. That includes jail. No, it doesn't. Get to that in a moment. It kind of includes jail. It can, it depends on the situation. That includes school, hospitals, like every time I've ever gone to a doctor's appointment, he comes with me all the way back, like into everything. Obviously the caveat is ORs, but anywhere I go, he goes. Airport security is a really good example of that. So when I go through TSA or any kind of security, he cannot be taken from me. And notice this harness is this is like hard, this is steel, it's a lot of metal. So he sets off every metal detector he goes through. And so we have to spend like an extra 20 minutes at airport security for the sake of us not being separated, which is a huge deal. Anyway, I digress. So.
Joe had a
dog-
question.
Oh, what? Sorry.
I was
Yes.
gonna ask, what can and cannot, what can TSA do with your service dog and what can't they do?
So what can they do? Next to nothing. They can search your dog, so they can like do a pat down. And that is it. They are not allowed to take the leash from you. They are not allowed to take your dog out of harness or anything like that. And that's a huge thing with, public access, which seems obvious, but your dog has to be working to be in public. So I can't just take Mercury anywhere and everywhere out of harness. If he's gonna be in public in a like non-pet friendly area, he has to be wearing the harness or he has the same rights as a pet. And that's really what makes the difference is that as soon as this harness comes on, he knows he's working and he behaves differently with a harness on than he does without one. So like, he seems really calm right now. This dog is a crack lab. Okay.
He's
I
bonkers.
cannot explain to you how insane this dog is on a
He's
daily
a goofy
basis.
guy, y'all.
He gets
He is.
zoomies twice a day. He's just like any other dog. He will get into the trash can. He will poop on my floor.
Him playing with your other dog is crazy.
Yes, he will play with other dogs. He will not play nicely with other dogs. Like, he's still a dog at the end of the day. Like service dogs are still dogs. They're just trained to do something for you. And it's a relationship. You have to have that relationship with your dog or it's not gonna work. So, but like I say, yes, it is like having a toddler tethered to you constantly. And that is literally the best way I can describe it. When I was going through college, I would have my backpack and I would have Mercury's backpack. And it was literally like a diaper bag for my dog. I would have like a bowl, treats, food, shoes, like an extra leash, poop bags, water, like I would have it all. Anything that he needed throughout the day, because we would be on campus for like 8 hours a day, So like.
Rachel,
he
do
would
you have
use
a
stuff.
question? I thought I heard a why.
Oh, no, I think she was saying like water and everything like that as well.
Okay.
Oh, yes, and please, if you have a question, verbalize.
I thought you were saying why for the shoes and those are like protect.
Yeah, from the
Squeaks.
heat.
Yeah.
His poor little
Yes.
toes,
It's
protection of
like-
the concrete. Oh, well.
Does he like them? No. Does he tolerate them? Yes.
He was
When he's off the
really-
club, though, he's very dramatic about it.
And he was really out of practice last time she put them on him to go to Disney. Like,
Oh, no,
you-
he wore them in Vegas.
Oh, Vegas.
Oh, right.
But you were like-
I was at a convention. There you go. I brought my father with me. Okay, so yeah, dad-daughter Vegas trip.
but just, I remember like the 2-3 weeks leading up to it, you were trying to get him used to the boots again and he was not happy
Yeah,
about it.
he's not happy about it, but he needs them. That's for sure. That hot concrete will like blister your dog's feet like nothing.
Did he ever try biting him off?
He'll lick them, like he can lick them off, and sometimes like, God, this is the worst. He'll wear them and like they'll come loose, and instead of like clearly being like, hey mom, loose, like stop and like let me know. No, he'll just let it go. Oh, come on. Oh, it fell off.
I was gonna say, and then poor blind Madeline cannot see that the boot's
I've
gone.
had people on campus come up to me and be like, hey, your dog lost a shoe, here it is, like, yeah, it's really embarrassing. It's very, gets you a lot of unwanted attention, that's for sure. People are going to be people, which is my favorite part about people, This includes all negatives, which are always like microaggressions you would not think would be like negative, but y'all, I will never forget this. And this is just kind of like a PSA that like, when you see someone with a service dog, what you say about their dog really like, like,
Hits
that's their
home.
baby, that's their whole world, and what you just be careful about what you say. I'll never forget this. I was in class, sitting at a desk, waiting for class to start. One of my classmates, who I had never spoken to in my life, didn't even know this person's name, comes into the doorway, sees Mercury and says, oh, he looks so sad. And I'm like, excuse me. Like, okay, first of all, I don't know who you are. I don't need you to comment on my dog's facial expression. A, B, he's a Labrador. All Labradors
I was gonna say,
look sad,
he
guys.
always just looks mopey.
literally, he has the face, it's the face, okay?
Built-in drama queen.
Like,
Yeah.
and this was like at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday, like, yeah, he's tired. We've been here all day, like, I'm tired too, do I look excited?
Do you think he is any more excited to be here than I am?
Like, he was like half asleep, like, anyway, I digress. So also, a lot of opportunities for education, which is always so fun. So, which does happen, I mean, there are some really great interactions that I've had with people because of Birthday, like people who have trained service dogs in the past will come up to me like, oh, like, let me tell you this really long story about how I was involved with service dogs, and like, oh yeah, that's great, like, you know, and it's kind of annoying sometimes because like people to go, like people to see places to go, but at the same time, like it is kind of cool to be part of a community like that and like be part of kind of like a spooky club, you know? And service dog handlers and people who are involved in that world. But you know, education opportunities come up more than anything else, I think. Like despite like really bad experiences and everything like that, just people are curious and will just ask random questions. So it's cool. It's cool. It's always fun to educate.
As long as they're polite.
Yeah, polite
Then
questions
it's
are always
like,
cool.
period, I'll educate you.
Oh yeah, throw back to the man on campus. Story
Sorry.
time later, story time later. Anyway, is a service dog right for you? Okay, so we've got to the point of our presentation where we are talking about service dog in the future of our lives. And the number one piece of advice I always give to people who are like, I don't want to have a service dog. Is that a good idea? I'll be like, wow, I really can't answer that question for you because you have to self-reflect. What is your life like? Service dogs are a huge responsibility. They're a huge commitment. They're a lot of work. They're worth it. That's 100% true, but they do require a lot. And not every disability can be aided by a service dog, which I really like. I think we talked about this earlier, maybe learning disabilities or maybe like the only one, but most disabilities can be mitigated, like aided in some kind of way by a service dog in some capacity. And if not, ESAs are always an option for anyone. Because, you know, anyone who is diagnosed with anything you can find in the DSM basically will allow you to get an ESA. And that's just a conversation you really have to have with your doctor, you know, if you regularly see a therapist. And you know, you don't necessarily have to like deem yourself to be like mentally ill to talk to your therapist that you see and talk about the want for an ESA. And that's a big decision that you have to make with your doctor. So
And I mean, sometimes you'll be in the position like I was, where I kind of forgot that an ESA letter was a thing. And I was like, oh no, I'm so stressed about bringing my cat here because, you know, this, that, and the other. And my therapist was just like, honey, I've already written your ESA letter. Like, this cat is very important to your health. And I'm so glad that you're finally moving him in with you. And I was like, thanks, Mary. I kind of forgot about that.
yeah, and that's one cool thing that, you know, I have a degree in psychology, and that's one cool thing that counselors usually do, words, that, you know, ESAs are a great thing, especially for college students. I mean, just anybody, I think everybody should be in therapy, but I think everybody benefits emotionally from just animals, dogs, whether that be a cat, whatever, but like, you know, there's all kinds of research on like just having a pet improves your life a lot. And, you know, just having a diagnosis like depression, major anxiety, or general anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder, all the things that you would, you know, think of your mental illnesses that aren't necessarily disabilities. ESAs are a really great like middle ground that, you know, are available for people. So
I
Can
know,
you get an ESA for personality disorder?
yeah,
Oh,
if there would
yeah.
be benefits, certainly, I don't know why not. Certainly a conversation you can have with. the
absolutely. Because
therapist.
ESAs, again, like they don't have public access rights, they don't require training. So like, you know, who's to say that any mental illness of any kind would not be aided by an ESA, you know? I'm a big supporter of ESAs as long as the handlers of an ESA follow them, you know? And I think they're great for people that need that support and that thing in your life without like, I'm gonna spend $60,000 on service dog and all of this training, you know? So
Yeah, for me, I have an ESA. If y'all ever see Fig in the Discord chat, that's my babe.
Same thing with my black and white cat.
Yes. She helps a lot with just anxiety, keeping me going, different things like that, and can be a really stabilizing source. And, you know, we see in research actually that, let's say you're a person with chronic pain or another disability, you can get benefit from an ESA because that's just a stable presence in your life as emotional support, and that's also needed. If not through a service dog, then through an ESA.
because again, service dogs are not for everybody. They're a huge commitment. They're very expensive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, you wanted to have like a cat in college, that was your ESA, and just, have it be in your dorm and you check all the boxes if you do that right, as long as you're a good animal caretaker. Nothing really wrong with that.
Yeah, because like that's the biggest, to me, like that's kind of like the biggest differentiation is that an ESA is primarily for use in your home. Like it gets you out of have to pay pet fees and this, that, and the other, and it's, you're totally fine there. But like that's not going to be super helpful to have an ESA if you need a lot of assistance with things in public. So like that's why, for instance, I'm thinking about one day getting a service dog because I would need tasks such as crowd control and deep pressure therapy because of, anxiety in public and paranoia in public, or like Madeline was talking about checking an environment to see if it would be a bad idea for me to enter it because of my anxiety. So it's like those are all things that are in public that it's like obviously just having an ESA at your house is not really going to do. So it's like that's kind of
Yeah, and
the
ESA
difference
is
there.
really, like, if you wanna think about it like clinically, it's just a prescription medication your therapist or psychiatric caretaker, healthcare worker gives you. And it's a great alternative, I think, to medication, like if you have, general anxiety and depression or seasonal affective disorder or anything like that, that, you don't really wanna go down the medication route, but you want something, and ESA is a really great alternative, I think. Not, not alternative to like modern medicine, obviously, but,
If that's not for you.
if that's step,
Certainly.
because it can be step 1 or it can be step 4, some things don't work when you're trying things, so. Carry on. What did I put here? Oh, yes, things to consider. Are you, okay, so this is really where it comes into, are you ready for a service dog? This is kind of the questions that I was asked, so, okay, back up, context. Mercury came from a guide school that was a nonprofit that provides guide dogs specifically to the blind free of cost to me. So I had to go through an application process and a whole like year-long journey to get Mercury. That is not the only way to get a service dog, or even the only way to get a guide dog. I mean, guide dogs are more commonly through nonprofits because it's really hard to be blind and self-train a guide dog. But it can be done if you have a team. But self-training, private trainers, it's always an option. But these are questions that I was asked when I applied to get Mercury, but I also think that these are really good questions just to ask yourself as someone who's thinking about getting a service dog, because it will make sure that you are prepared. So you got to think about what your living situation is like. Do you have other pets at home? Do you have family? Do you have roommates? Do you live in an apartment? Do you have a fenced-in backyard? What does your house look like? All that kind of stuff. Do you know how to take care of a dog? Because at the end of the day, they're still a dog. You still have to trim their nails and bathe them and feed them and do other things and take them to the vet and
Take them on walks.
blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, walks are a big thing. I have to, I have to take Mercury like 5 times a day easily. But yeah, he's a lot. The dogs are a lot, and big dogs are a lot. Mercury's like an 80-pound Labrador. That's not like a super like easy, breed to take care of. There's big dogs, especially when you're young in college, could be a lot. So, yeah. And then do you live an active enough lifestyle for a dog? So that being said, your service dog has to be working to be a service dog. So you want to make sure that you give them enough opportunities to actually do their job. So being in college is actually a really active lifestyle. That's when I got Mercury. I just saw, no. Look at me. Look at me. I'm trying to think. I was a junior in college, fall junior year. I got over this summer. So I was starting my junior year with a guide dog. And I was living in an apartment at that time, but I took him to campus every single day and we walked. So he was walking 5 miles a day, easily 5 days a week, so we got a lot of exercise. So we had a lot of a very active lifestyle, and that was a good fit for him because he's a very athletic dog. And we just had, a lot of opportunities to do that. And, but someone who's, inside all the time that like really doesn't like, just kind of lives a sedentary lifestyle, or like maybe works from home and doesn't really go out and about in the community, service dog may not be a great option for them because that dog won't have the opportunity to work. And then can you afford your dog? Dogs are expensive. And you still have to, so even though the dog comes free of cost from my school, I still pick up the cost afterward. So I, still have to pay his vet bills. I still have to buy all of his stuff for grooming needs, his food, toys, his kennel. If he messes up something of mine, I have to replace it, and it's just expensive. I mean, I spend several $1,000s on Mercury a year. So it's just something that you need to think about before you make that commitment.
I have a question real quick before you move on to the next part.
Yes.
I know under the ADA, there definitely aren't a lot of rules about how you take care of your service dog, but I know Guiding Eyes has stuff that you have to pertain to. If you
Oh,
wanna go
yes,
with that.
so that's a huge, and this is kind of why I'm a bigger supporter of getting your dog from a school, like a nonprofit, because it keeps the handler accountable too. So when I got Mercury through his school, he is not technically my dog legally. He's a dog that is owned by Guiding Eyes for the Blind, and he was given to me, but he's legally theirs. And I'm under contract with them until he retires, that he has to be maintained at a certain health standard. He has to, like, it's in his contract that I have to take him out at least 5 times a day and things like that. And that really cuts down on the animal abuse that is possible in and around the world of service dogs. It does happen. Not all people are perfect, and not all disabled people are good people, which is just an unfortunate fact of being in the world. So, not that the dog abuse rate inside the disabled community is high, it's not, but it does happen. So there are things that I think, schools can put in place to kind of mitigate that to the point where, if the handler is mistreating their service dog, the school can come and take that dog away. It's like, CPS, but for dogs. And for the sake of the dog and, animal rights. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I mean, if I was abusing my dog, I hope somebody would keep me accountable, especially a service dog that was given to me.
Because the ADA doesn't have much to say about that. There's not nearly enough standards. What was it, like 3 things for keeping your access rights as a dog versus these nonprofits want you to, utilize your service animal, treat them well, get the most out of this opportunity. So.
And yeah, just real quick, real life example, when I was going through school and getting Mercury, we were going through our contract at school, and our supervisor was going through all these rules with us, and we obviously got to ask questions about them. And they had something about if you retire your service dog, like when Mercury retires in 2 years, he has only specific options of what happens to him after that. He can either stay with me, he can go to a family or friend that I choose. He can go back to his puppy raiser, who's a girl named Bryn, who lives up in Connecticut, who's an angel. Or he can go back to his trainer, which is a woman named Lori, who works at Guiding Eyes for the Blind. And that's the 4 places he can go. And it has happened in the past where a guy will retire and get put in the Humane Society for a pound. And having a contract where the school owns the dog, they have the capability of when that does happen, because it does, they can go to that dog shelter and say, hey, that dog is microchipped for Guiding Eyes for the Blind. It's our dog, we get back now, please. Because, to think of a dog that has dedicated its entire life to the service of human to be ending up in a pound essentially is just.
And I'm assuming that also means that they can press charges against the handler as well.
They can. I mean, I'm sure it has happened in the past. I've never heard of that happening, but that would just be, it's more of a priority of the dog's safety more than anything else. So they probably wouldn't press charges. I mean, obviously I can't speak for Guiding Eyes, but I would imagine if I was in charge of that, I would not press charges. I just would never give that person a dog again. You get blacklisted from every guide dog school in the country, and that can happen. If you are deemed to be, especially if you go through the process of applying through a school instead of going through another option to get a service dog, I had to supply references of people that I just knew, and they called all of my references and asked me about my life and how I was, and had I ever owned a dog before, and how do I behave around animals and things like that. So, I mean, those are all valid questions, I think so. But yeah, and then major question, last question you need to ask yourself really is why, and I think this is kind of a harder question to answer for yourself, but why are you considering a service dog? And this requires, I think, more intro and introspection than most people, I think, realize or talk about. But why are you wanting a service dog? Is it valid and good reasons? So a great example is do you want a service dog because you truly want that freedom, or do you want a puppy? Because that's valid. So is getting a service dog your idea, or is it your mom's idea, or your sister's idea, or your roommate's idea, or your boyfriend's idea? It should be your idea, because it's your 10-year commitment. Which brings me to, are you prepared for a 10-year emotional, physical, financial commitment? Because that is how long you will be committed to your dog. It is for life. And it is a huge commitment and you gotta be ready for it. And that's just the way it rolls. And to that bit, you know, that's like, oh my God, this is so much, it's such a big responsibility. It is, but I've had so much of my life change because of Mercury, and a lot of autonomy that I had lost because of my loss of eyesight was given back to me because of Mercury. And why it's so important for people with disabilities is just because of that sense of autonomy and freedom that we get from having a sidekick, essentially, and especially as a blind woman, young woman, I feel significantly safer with an 80-pound Labrador next to me all the time. Like within a year and a half of me getting Mercury, I think it might have been 2 years, but the first big thing we did as a team, we went to Chicago. And it was great, nothing bad happened to us, but I felt very safe in that city, you know, because I had a big dog and I had 0 negative interactions while I was there. So pretty cool, but it opens up your world a lot, and yeah. Okay. What's on the next slide? We have the next slide. Might be it.
It's just your QR.
Oh, yes, okay. So thank you for listening. And this QR code leads you to the ADA page of the frequently asked questions about service dogs. So you can find way more information than what I shared there. And that has more information about what the ADA says about service dogs and Fair Housing Act and everything else. So yeah, and we can do, you know, any kind of questions, just let me know. And thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate it.
I was gonna say, he's like, are we done yet? Should we go back home?
I guess we can go.
Does anyone have any questions?
Are you gonna keep it?
Oh, yeah.
He's
such a-
family now.
My mom keeps trying to tell me, oh, look, he hit Mercury.
Nice try.
That's Apple at home, they don't need to, and my mom keeps like pretending like she has some kind of claim to him. This is not your dog.
He and famous are gonna keep being gay lovers.
And I probably won't get another guide dog until Mercury's like not with us anymore, because I don't think it would be fair to him to have to watch another service dog leave every day with me and him not get to go.
Mhm.
And that's something that different people have different feelings about. Like, I know a lot of people like they'll go through the same school for another dog.
I'll probably go back to guiding night.
Yeah.
I love their program, and I'll, you know, I'm used to their facilities and stuff, so, but it's, you know, and that's why, you know, schools are always great, but going through private trainers, it can be a little bit expensive, which is a huge reason, you know, the ADA, imperfect document, all service dogs, I think should be covered by health insurance. But there, you know, the other options instead of going to a nonprofit can be a little bit expensive, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and also something that I've noticed just in talking with Madeline and other service dog handlers is a lot of people who go through private trainers don't necessarily learn the rights around it versus these nonprofit schools.
Yes.
That's part of this
Yeah,
curriculum.
yeah, and that's, I think, yeah, yes, that's very true. I didn't even think about that. Did I say that?
I don't think so.
Well,
I just thought
good
of
on
other
you,
people.
because you are correct. Yes, no, you are correct. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, you really don't know your rights, as a handler, which honestly is just. If I didn't know my rights as a handler, my experience with a service dog would be pretty negative. You know, like the amount of times I've been like, oh, you can't come in here with your dog, like.
I was gonna say, I almost feel like you have to have a printout copy of the ADA with you wherever you go. To be like, here is highlighted where I am in fact allowed in here, and these are the questions you can ask.
Yes, I've had to like literally say that to people before, but it's everywhere. The honestly, all the one place I have not denied access is the world. Straight up.
I believe it.
Disney World, straight up. They handle service dogs perfectly. Disney World does. So
It's like there's definitely some things that they handle better than others, but I know like when I went recently and I had the disability pass, like it changed my entire experience from when I'd gone in the past. So, and I mean, they were even like a lot of the rides that move for you to get on, like they were like, we can stop the ride for you to get on, because I was using a walker at that time.
yeah, Mercury can go on the ride from Disney World or any theme park. He can go on as long as they're not roller coasters. He loves the boat rides.
Please tell me you watch carefully, be sure he doesn't drink that damn water. I feel like he so would.
Jump in. Are you kidding? He's a lab. Close for a long ride. Yeah,
Like, I'm just thinking about the horrors that I know about, like, the water for the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, like, oh my god.
Okay, he's been on that twice, the little cannons, really freaking. Funny, but
Okay.
it's funny because, okay, if you do the context, he was puppy raised on the Air Force Base. Okay, this is a military adjacent dog, okay, not a military, but he was there. He saw all the big duels and like the sirens and stuff, but, so he's usually okay, with stuff like that, doesn't really need it, but I think it's just because they come out of nowhere. There's nothing to like, let you know it's coming,
It might be the smoke.
not to, yeah.
Mhm.
He gets his nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When we've had bonfires, he like,
I will never sleep through a fire.
no, he will not.
I said that all the time. I think it's so true. He doesn't even like me saying it close to the stove.
He gives
Oh
me
my
nasty
gosh.
looks anytime I burn anything.
I believe
If
it.
he's judging more than that, he'll never will.
Yeah.
So our online guest, Gentry, he asked, what is the biggest learning curve when it comes to having a service dog?
Ooh. Let me think. What did I struggle with most?
He's like, what did you struggle
Dude,
with most? Mom?"
trusting your dog. Trusting your dog is actually a really big learning curve. For someone who, and like a lot of people would think like that's, wouldn't make sense, but it like you have to put, okay, y'all, back up. Okay, so just put yourself in the situation for a second. You're about to either get a dog from a school that's trained already, that has had nothing to do with you, and you're just getting introduced to this fully trained dog, right? And you just grab that harness on day one and you're gone. And you have to put so much, and you're only in training up in your guide school for 3 weeks. And so you have to put a lot of trust in that dog. With owner trained dogs or privately trained dogs, you are doing the training. So your dog is only as good as your training is. Hello. So like, that's stressful. But your dog also has a brain and 2 pairs of eyes of its own, right? Or a pair of eyes of its own, 2 eyes. But you have to be able to trust that dog that your dog's gonna make good decisions, especially like, I'm talking from the lens of a guide dog user where Mercury has learned disobedience, where he'll not listen to a command of mine if he knows it's gonna present danger. So this has happened more than once in my life, but like I've asked him to start crossing an intersection as a car is coming, and he doesn't listen to me because he knows obviously that we'd be killed by doing that. So, so,
It's like the one story I know you've talked about before where you couldn't hear it, but he could hear like this big tractor trailer coming.
dude, we got
Like-
the intersection by the roundabout going to 111.
Oh my god.
18-wheeler. And I was like, dude, I almost broke down. Until I broke down. It was bad, but he saved my life. It was an experience. But but yeah, trusting your dog, I think, is the hugest learning curve because, like, and I can't even speak for all types of service dogs because it's just different. But when you're blind and like you really, like you just don't know what you're. It's like walking into the abyss, especially like when we're walking around at night, going into dark places, going from outdoors to indoors, and like waiting for my eyes to adjust and things like that. Like just dark here. Like this room's pretty dark for me right now, and like you just kind of have to let your dog guide you where you're going. And if you've never been to somewhere before and you like really don't know where you're going, like you have to fully trust that your guide dog is going to keep you at harm's way, really. And yeah, it takes a while to get used to, but it's very free. But yeah, that's a good question. I think
That is a good question. Yeah.
But yeah, trusting an animal that you cannot verbally communicate with is hard,
Yeah.
because like, having a person help you is different, because like, you talk to them, obviously, but like, Mercury can't tell me like, I don't know what you mean, or like, that's confusing, it just has to go off with my verbal and hand signals. But that's why, not distracting a service dog is very important. So,
I feel like it emphasizes the idea of like y'all being a team, and that's something you have to build that bond,
yes,
is what I've heard you say a lot.
yes.
This is another question. I'm not certain if you 100% can answer like definitively that you know of this, but he was wondering, do service dogs ever get paired with someone with cerebral palsy?
Yes, those are mobility dogs.
I do know that
Absolutely.
happens too.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
There's a lot of my friends, a couple of my friends that have the same disability that I have, which is under the
Palsy
tree
kind of,
of
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
cerebral palsy.
Oh, yeah, those are 100% mobility dogs. And, there's just a lot of physical disabilities that mobility dogs can mitigate.
Could you give a few examples of some tasks to
Yeah,
like
so
help
like
open
mobility
the eyes?
dog tasks are like turning on and off the lights, getting a bottle of medicine, opening the fridge, helping you dress and undress. Some mobility dogs can physically pull their handlers in their wheelchairs. Just any and all, like you'll have, like helping you with any kind of mundane task that would not necessarily require opposable thumbs. A dog can do, but even like grabbing a medicine bottle in their mouth.
Yeah.
So, you know, it really depends on how much training you're willing to put into your dog. Dogs are really smart. They can learn to do almost anything within reason. You know, they have the same vocabulary as a 3-year-old human. So it's kind of sky's the limit when it comes to the mobility dogs. They're kind of amazing. It's really cool to watch them work. So yeah, absolutely.
But, if no one else has any questions, this right here goes to SDAG's link tree. If anyone wants to improve me through Discord, find any other resources, feel free to scan that. But with all that being said, I think we can wrap up here. Extra credit students, make sure to go up to Gray. But yeah, thank you for coming and talking about the things.
The things.
The things, the service dogs,
Thanks.
the things. But yeah,
Excellent.
if anyone has any more questions, Madeline's still here, so.
Oh, did you want to do voter registration day?
Right, yes, today is National Voter Registration Day, so I know Madeline brought some voter registration forms, so if anyone needs to update their address. Register to vote for the first time, any of that, I can help you go through that.
Yes, and you can either meet with them with me and I'll mail it out. So. Thanks for being here.
I know. We don't need support. Do we?
No, we should be good.
No. Ooh, now.
Yeah, as I say, we can turn on a light if we need to. But okay, I will go ahead and stop our recording.